So this Friday, yes, Friday people, not Saturday, we have a neat little scrap for the British super middleweight title between champion Troy Williamson and challenger Josh Kelly. But before I get into this fight and give my breakdown and my prediction, I just want to signpost you guys to the video you see on screen now. And that is by Punch Perfect Boxing. And that is his breakdown and prediction of this fight. And I must say, it is a fantastic video. It's a stellar video. So if you haven't seen it already, check it out, because in 15 minutes, he pretty much covers everything. So much so that I was kind of in doubts whether I should actually do my own video, because I was thinking, I'm not sure if I have anything else to add. So I imagine that if you're watching this video of mine, you've probably already seen his. But if you haven't, check it out. It's very much well worth your time. And it's a great video. So shout out to you, Punch Perfect Boxing. So we have this fight happening on Friday, and I think it's a brilliant fight. But kind of antithetical to that, I've never been entirely sold or convinced by either fighter, Troy Williamson or Josh Kelly. And I was actually aware of both guys when they were still amateurs. And, you know, I thought, okay, they're decent. They're probably the most talented on the squad, but it wasn't a deep talent. Especially with Josh Kelly, because he's very flashy, very athletic, quite dynamic. But I was just never sold. I always felt like something was missing. And many people kind of held that same view. They were never convinced by him, never sold. And when he lost to Avanesian, it didn't really come as a surprise, because people weren't thinking of Josh Kelly losing badly by stoppage as a matter of if. They saw it as a matter of when and who would it be. And it happened to be February 2021 against David Avanesian. And I feel like we can kind of draw a lot to that fight, because, yeah, David Avanesian and Troy Williamson aren't exactly the same, but there are some parallels between them two. But just to go back to Josh Kelly, as I say, very athletic, very dynamic, quite sharp early on. I feel like we know what he brings to the table, but we also know his shortcomings especially. There seems to be a lack of boxing IQ, a lack of consistent boxing skill, a bit too much over-reliance on the athleticism that certainly costs him against a particular type of opponent. And Josh Kelly, just to provide some context, he's kind of been out in the wilderness since that loss to Avanesian. He's had 2 fights since. I've only seen one of them, but I haven't seen much development in his game, in his performances since losing to Avanesian. And, you know, you could say that maybe they just haven't brought it out for him, but I don't really buy that, because, you know, when a fighter suffers a loss and a pretty damaging loss like he did to Avanesian, a lot of fighters, they take the time to really regroup and rediscover a love for boxing and get back in, and can sometimes display a lot of sharpness, and they make an effort to show that they've been developing behind the scenes and adding new things to their arsenal. I haven't really seen that from Josh Kelly. In the fight of his I saw since then, which was the Bastida fight, I just saw more of the same. I saw a lot of posing, a lot of kind of reactivity. I think that's really the key word. When I think of Josh Kelly, I think of reactive. I don't see a proactive fighter who looks to set up his shots, pick and poke and feint and use softer shots, probing shots to open an opponent up. I see a guy who just relies on reflexes to largely react to what his opponent does and wing in a flashy, powerful punch. And as Punch Perfect touched on, that's not enough when you start going through the levels. You need more than that. That stuff is, yeah, it's highlight reel stuff, but, you know, boxing isn't a highlight reel. It's a 10-round fight. It's a 12-round fight where you have to think your way through. And I'm not entirely sure that Josh Kelly can do that. And I don't think the Avanesian defeat has kind of spurred him on to learn that. And so that was largely my frame of mind when this fight was even announced, was, okay, Williamson versus Kelly. I was just like, Williamson all day. But as the fight's gotten closer, I've been watching a lot more of the two men. And I start to, you know, I don't want to say I've done a 180, but I'm a bit more on the fence now, because I'm looking at Troy Williamson in his recent fights. And he's kind of a different, almost the antithesis to Josh Kelly, where he's not that athletic. You know, he's kind of athletic. He's super shredded, looks like he's in great shape. But I see him as more of a fit guy, more of a workhorse than a natural athlete. Very strong, but not particularly fast, I want to say. Technique-wise, can be a little bit crude at times, I feel. And one thing he does have going in his favour, though, Troy Williamson, is he understands how to drag you into a fight where you kind of come down to his level. I was watching the Mason Cartwright fight, and I feel like that's probably the best example of this that I've seen anyway. Because Mason Cartwright, I know he's, you know, some of you guys are going to be thinking, who? Like, who the hell is this guy? But he was a neat kind of technical fighter in that fight. He was using his slips, head movement, feints. He was timing Troy Williamson a lot early on and really making Troy Williamson look kind of silly for the first 3 or 4 rounds. And he actually knocked Troy Williamson down in the second round, I believe, and hurt him numerous times. So he was pretty much bossing the fight. But I feel like he started to get over-eager. And Troy Williamson was basically inviting him in. And it played into Troy Williamson's hands because he was like, right, now I don't have to come tracking you down. Now I can draw you into my kind of fight where, for all Troy Williamson's shortcomings, he knows how to fight in terms of get stuck in, kind of skills, fundamentals go out the window, and it just comes down to strength and heart and grit and who can just outlast the other man. And he really started to work Cartwright over in that fight and overcome a pretty, you know, significant, I'm not going to say big, but I'm going to say significant skill gap. I don't think people really gave Mason Cartwright the credit for the technique and the IQ that he displayed early in that fight. And so it really comes down to this fight between Williamson and Kelly. You have the guy, the athlete, who doesn't have that much skill, but has a bit more polish in terms of, you know, one punch technique and kind of jumping out the way of shots sometimes, against the kind of raw determination, grit and strength and just willingness to be rugged and get stuck in of Williamson. And I thought that makes for a really good, entertaining fight, prospectively, which we've seen many times for British titles in different weight classes. They always turn out to be really, really good, kind of low-key but really entertaining fights. And so I'm looking at this fight and seeing, okay, Troy Williamson can be caught early, can be outboxed early, can be timed. Sometimes he's a bit rigid in the back, can back up from exchanges with his hands not necessarily down, but he's just so upright where he may as well have his hands down because his head's so high up and he just gets clocked. That is really going to be Josh Kelly's time to capitalize with those fast, powerful shots, is when Troy Williamson's back up, follow him and be like for all Josh Kelly's faults rather, he is explosive, very sharp, but it's just the application of the sharpness isn't the best. I don't think he engages his boxing IQ enough, even if he even has that boxing IQ. But Troy Williamson can sometimes just have these lapses where he's not that defensively responsible. And we saw that against Mason Cartwright, because when he got knocked down in the second round, it was kind of mid-exchange, but he was just upright, so tall, and got hit with I can't remember whether it was a left hook or a right hand, but he definitely took a fair few of each of those punches throughout the early rounds. I feel like that's going to be the best time for Josh Kelly to capitalize. But if Troy Williamson is able to close the distance, just keep his head a bit lower and kind of get underneath the chin onto the chest of Josh Kelly, I think Josh Kelly's going to be in for a torrid night, because I'm not sure if he's going to have the strength to counteract what Williamson is doing. And Williamson has an engine, very fit guy, as I say, very strong, and his strength seems to last quite well. And he's not afraid to get stuck in, as I say, and throw his punches wherever they land just to chip away at you. So, like punch perfect boxing, I definitely see Josh Kelly's best chances being early, Troy Williamson's chances being late. But with Josh Kelly, I just feel, how has he recovered from the mental scars of the Avanesian fight? Because I'm not sure we've seen in his past 2 performances him actually not only develop technically, but psychologically? Has he exercised those demons? Whereas Troy Williamson, yeah, he's had a couple of tough fights against opposition that he's really been expected to get out of there, but he does have a decent amount of momentum, and he's still on a winning streak. He's still going to come in as a proud champion, a guy who's looking back at performances saying, okay, I was outboxed, but I managed to get back doing what I do best. So, and fights like that, even if the opponent doesn't technically resemble the opponent you're going into against now, at least you're kind of battle hardened. You have that momentum, you have that confidence, and you can think, you know what, I've done it to this guy, I've done it to that guy, I've managed to claw back a victory and rescue it. I can do the same in this one. Whereas Josh Kelly, he hasn't had an opportunity to prove to himself that he can hang in there after a crisis or even after a competitive fight. So for that reason, I'm going to go for Troy Williamson. I want to say stoppage, rounds 10 or 11. And I'm not saying that with very much confidence. I could very well see a Josh Kelly victory early if he's able to just sting Williamson and follow up and get him out of there. I could also see Williamson winning on points. I think it'd actually be quite unlikely if Kelly won on points. So I'm just going to go with the man who, as of late, has been a bit more consistent, has had a bit more momentum, is undefeated for whatever that's worth. But yeah, I just feel like Williamson, as long as he can get out of those early rounds, maybe get Josh Kelly a bit more ragged, he can probably take him into deep water towards the end of the fight, drown him, and get him out of there round 10 or 11. Probably even in a similar fashion to the Avanesian fight, where Josh Kelly's just so battered and bruised, but still trying at least a bit, but his corner's just like, nah, we've seen this before, let's just chuck in the towel. So that's my prediction for this one. Troy Williamson, I anticipate he will defend his British title with a 10th or 11th round stoppage of Josh Kelly. Just my opinion, however. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. I'll get back to you. But for now, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.